I'm going to talk about Spey, which I've been basically, this was a project that I wanted to learn some statistics. I'm a theorist, so I had no idea about statistics. So this is my way of learning a bit more statistics, and it evolved from there. So I'm try to go back and forth between slides and the code. It should be on Binder by now, if you want to play with it. So yeah, let me go through the main idea of the project. So if you were on the last reinterpretation workshop, there was a beautiful talk from Costin. If you want, GitHub link is here. The talk link is here. Everything is clickable on the slide, so you can just take it away from there. So the main idea was, how can we have a generalized sterilization way to describe statistical models and everything. And Spey is basically a code version of that. Instead of having a file that describes a sterilized version of likelihood, we are trying to express the likelihood in a functional way. And it's like try to be complementary, because at the end of the day, we cannot maybe serialize every single idea. So there are lots of different things. For example, when we have not enough information from the experimental collaborations to construct a likelihood, or so we describe a approximate method, like the simplified likelihood framework and everything, that with the covariance matrices, putting a gigantic covariance matrix in a serialized form in a JSON file, for example, would be huge. So trying to express that in Spey. We can have machine learned likelihoods, because having a full likelihood can be very, very expensive. So we can describe a likelihood in a machine learned scenario and try to do inference from there, etc. And of course, the other idea is, how can we unite all the likelihood prescriptions? Because in the market, you can see there's PyHF, there's FastProf, there's lots of packages that does inference. So the idea is, can I use their machinery to combine different statistical models? I don't know, for example, combine Atlas, CMS analysis together and do much more much bigger analysis with this combination. That's the origin of this project, basically. So today I'm going to talk about a little bit introduction. I'm going to go through some simplified likelihood examples. I'm going to show you how can we incorporate different packages into Spey, and of course how to combine. These are the basic examples of Spey, basically. So let's go through the introduction. So I guess I don't need to tell you why statistical models are very important. It's basically a mathematical description of the analysis of the experimental analysis. So once we have this, we can do all sorts of inference from our theoretical side, because we come up with a new theory every day in the shower. So we need to test this against experimental data. And having this statistical model is quite important to make this experiment live forever, hopefully. So far, CMS been sharing with us the covariance matrices to construct simplified likelihoods, and beautifully Atlas through PyHF started to share, it's been a while actually, these JSON files which we can put in PyHF. I think Matthew talked about this yesterday, and we can basically use the full statistical models through PyHF. So there's already lots of development there. But the question is, what does Spey do? The thing is, we have lots of sources of likelihood, right? But the problem is, I mean, it can have different sources, but it doesn't matter where our likelihood is coming from. I am a theorist. I don't care the structure of the likelihood. I care about the result, right? So it doesn't matter where the what is the origin of the likelihood. So what I want to do is compute p-values, generate samples, combine these likelihoods, and all this can be done within the Spey interface. And we have something called Spey plugin, we can create different plugins for Spey, and Spey can automatically detect these plugins and use for the inference in the interface. That's the goal of Spey. What am I trying to do? And it's of course in the PyP, so you can just install it, pip install Spey. So let me go through very simple examples. So as I said, CMS been sharing with us this simplified likelihood framework with covariance matrices and everything. So what does this look like? We basically have this gigantic covariance matrix from every single, not every single analysis, but most of the analysis, let's say, hopefully by now. For example, with this particular analysis, we have 186 signal regions, and this is basically describing the likelihood structure. And we can put this into a Poisson times multivariate Gaussian likelihood and do all sorts of inference. Of course, this is not perfectly accurate. So there's been different ways to try to improve this. Andy and friends describe this third moment expansion series where it's try to capture the skewness of the likelihood and try to get more accurate likelihood prescription from there. And in the paper of Spey, I converted basically Barlow's variable Gaussian approximation into Poisson times Gaussian way, so that it's actually try to get much more accurate representation of the full likelihood with respect to the third moment expansion, hopefully. So when we put all this together, what we see actually for the exclusion limit for this particular analysis, I'm showing you, for example, here, the black line is the CMS expected limit, original one, over here, and the red one is the main covariance matrix result, so the main simplified likelihood framework. As you can see, there's a huge difference between the full statistical model, full exclusion limit, and the simplified framework. And once we go to the third moment expansion, the blue line here, it gets a little bit better, but not exactly. And then we can even further improve this with this effective sigma, as I showed you before, this Barlow's approximation, reparameterized version of Barlow's approximation, as you can see here. So it's not just the way we recast the analysis that gives us the discrepancy between experimental results and the theoretical result, but also how we construct the likelihood gives us the huge difference. So proposing better likelihood prescription if we don't have the full likelihood gives us this improvement. So it's very, very valuable to have the ability to propose different likelihoods and publish different likelihood structures and use this for inference in all the reinterpretation software. Before going to including existing packages, let's go through the code a little bit. So hopefully you can still see my screen. I'm showing you the code at the moment. Can you please confirm that you can see the Jupyter notebook?
Yes, we can.
Perfect, great. So I'm just gonna execute this. So I'm here, I'm importing all the tools that I'm gonna use this within this Jupyter notebook. I think you don't need to install anything for Binder. Everything is already installed for you. There's a requirements package. And so, as I said, this is a plugin based structure. So we have the default PDF structures where I'm describing correlated backgrounds. Effective sigma is this Barlow's reparameterized version of Barlow's variational Gaussian method, the third moment expansion, and a very simplified version of uncorrelated background structure. And on top of that, since as I told you, Spey can detect automatically if you write a plugin. So I already installed the PyHF plugin here, so you can see the PyHF version of available backends. So we can automatically use this. If you want to know more about how can you design your own backend, in the documentation, there's a building a plugin section, and you can go through that, and it's basically step-by-step describes you how to create a backend that Spey can recognize and automatically include it through the inference procedure. Of course, one important thing is when you write a plugin for Spey and publish it, you might have a really interesting idea. You might have a publication out of it. So it's very important to of course, cite these backends through Spey, because otherwise the user doesn't know where it's coming from. So there's a metadata section of every class that we are creating in Spey, every backend. So it basically tells you the DOI number, archive number, and everything if you provide this metadata in your class construction. These are all step-by-step written in the building plugin section. So if you want to construct your own likelihood prescription, it will be already there, and basically Spey can pull it out. So I already provided you some sort of NumPy file for data. So within this data, we have observed the yields, background uncertainty, covariance matrix, third moments, upper and lower uncertainty envelopes, and signal yields, just to have you all the information that you need. This is taken from CMS SUSY 2004 analysis, and you can just basically import this. You already know everything. This is NumPy, this is nothing really interesting. So what I want to show you is how can we get this simplified likelihood. Let's start with the most basic simplified likelihood structure, where we have a covariance matrix, background yields, observed yields, etc., etc. So our likelihood structure, as I showed you before, is like this. We have signal, we have background yields, we have observed observations from experiment, uncertainties coming from this covariance matrix, and the correlation matrix, which describes the bin-by-bin correlations between the data. So how can we get this backend? We basically get this, write this accessor here with the get backend functionality, which creates a wrapper around our likelihood prescription. Okay, so I'm going to basically run this. And if you just write a question mark here, for example, you will get all the description of this likelihood, what kind of arguments it takes, etc., etc. So fairly standard. So what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to feed signal yields. These are basically, if we look into it, these are just list or NumPy arrays. It's not very interesting. I'm basically giving a list or matrices for the covariance matrix into this wrapper in terms of how it takes it. And once we create this structure, as you can see, it has the analysis name. This is basically a unique name for this because we're going to combine different analyses, hopefully, in the bottom of this thing. So it requires a unique name for every single statistical model so that it can differentiate it. And we have the backend here and calculators. These calculators are for the exclusion limit calculation. So you can create toy examples, you can use the asymptotic formula to calculate the p-values, or you can use the chi-square, very simple way to calculate. The reason why we have three different options, because, for example, we might have a machine learned scenario where we cannot generate Asimov data to calculate the asymptotic formula, or we cannot sample, for example, if we have a very simple machine learned structure, but we can calculate chi-square from the likelihood so that we can do the calculate p-values from there. So we have different options for different likelihood constructions. And as I learned, we can of course implement more and more different ways of calculating p-values. So the idea, we can of course do all sorts of calculation from here. So for example, in here, I'm showing you a very simple scan. How can we calculate the likelihoods basically from the likelihood instance of every single model? So the main idea is this is agnostic to likelihood prescription. So every single likelihood structure from PyHF, from fastproof, from machine learned models, every single instance every single backend has same functionality. It becomes agnostic. So you can use every single same functions for every single backend that we propose in Spey. So here I'm basically scanning the POI, the test POI test for pre-fit and post-fit scenarios, and I'm calculating the maximum likelihood with mu hat and maximum likelihood result from here, and we can basically plot this in a very simple manner. As you can see, pre-fit centralizes at 0, and as we expect, post-fit is much more shifted with respect to that. So it's a very simple version, and we can of course calculate the upper limit on mu with different plus minus sigmas as you can see here, it will take a little bit of time because it's finding the upper limit on mu. We can, of course, calculate the upper limit with different confidence level if you want 68% confidence level here, pretty standard. And we can, of course, create this in terms of a Brazilian flag type of plot and put it into our papers if we need to. As you can see, we can just literally improve plot whatever the exclusion limit that we will get on top of the plot, and we can find the upper limit with the by hand or through the interface itself. As I said, we can calculate the exclusion confidence level. This is 1 minus CLS value, not the CLS value itself. So this is basically, this particular model is excluded by 87% confidence level, for example. And we can do the same thing for the post-fit scenarios with the plus minus 1 sigma or plus minus 2 sigma, as you like. As you can see, this is prescribed in this list format. So we have all this other likelihood prescriptions, as I told you before, and these are all having the same structure as I told you. Of course, you can calculate the third moment by yourself as well. Am I running out of time? A little bit. So I'm gonna speed up a little bit. So as I told you, every single structure has the same functionality exactly. So you can basically use same functions for each and every one of them. There are helper functions to convert covariance matrices into correlation matrices. For the effective sigma model is the reparameterized version of Barlow's approximation of the variable Gaussian, basically, again. And again, I'm calculating these using the same functionality, POI, upper limit, exclusion confidence level. As you can see, the functionality is not changing with respect to the likelihood that I'm using. Likelihood can change, the likelihood can be anything you want. It can be your own plugin, as I said, but the functionality of this likelihood will never change because we are basically Spey is wrapping around your likelihood construction. So in a way that it's standardizing your likelihood construction for people to use. And here I'm showing you another example. I'm basically comparing different likelihood constructions as I showed you earlier. I'm basically plotting chi-square. There's a chi-square functionality as well, but I'm not using this functionality because it calculates the maximum likelihood every single time. This will be optimized in the future. But I'm basically here calculating the maximum likelihood for every single scenario, calculating the likelihood for every single scenario, and from there calculating the chi-square. And you can easily compare different types of likelihood, different types of approximations, and how they deviate from each other or deviate from the original likelihood prescription coming from the experiment. So let's turn back to the how to interpret the existing packages. Of course, PyHF is one of the biggest examples where you can basically use full likelihood structures in the PyHF and calculate the likelihood from there, calculate exclusion limits and everything from there. All these provided through HEP data by the experimental collaborations. And Spey can basically it has a plugin. You can basically pip install Spey PyHF plugin and use PyHF functionality from there. What it does is basically constructs the likelihood from PyHF and then uses all the internal optimization tools to optimize this likelihood or calculate the Hessian, calculate the gradient, etc., etc. So the functionality is basically we have all the tools to combine different statistical models. If you have full prescription of the statistical model, you can use the Spey PyHF plugin to combine different statistical models. As you can see, I'm showing you here, the red curve is the best. So this particular analysis is giving you 3 different statistical models for super regions, let's say, and the red curve is showing you the best statistical model, most sensitive statistical model within these three, and we can of course combine these together to get much better approximation of the like not approximation but much better fit to the experimental results. Of course, there is a recast uncertainty in this scenario, but let's avoid that because it's coming from meta-analysis instead of Spey. So how can we use this through Spey? Let me show you real quickly. I'm giving you a background only JSON file here in the folder, so you can just import this. And I have a simplified version of a signal here, which is taken from HEP data for I think Atlas 2009. I didn't write it, but HEP data link is here. So if you want to go check it out. So this is all PyHF structure. So you can feed PyHF dictionary structures into Spey, and it will basically give it to contact with PyHF and get your likelihood for you. And as before, we have this get backend function to get the PyHF PDF wrapper. And I can feed all the information that I need to this wrapper to create this statistical model for me. And again, same functionality as before, because the idea of Spey is basically making this likelihood prescriptions completely agnostic. And I can calculate everything through the same functionality. I don't need to learn anything new. I don't need to reinvent the wheel because plugin is already there. PyHF is already doing a great job, so why would we reinvent the wheel? And then combining the statistical models. So of course, I want to study the Atlas, CMS, and all the other experiments together, hopefully one day. So the question is, how can I combine these? So the main issue between combination is there's no prescription to combine certain nuisance parameters. So for the first iteration, we are assuming that these likelihoods are not correlated. So since we have this agnostic structure now, we can combine two likelihoods. It can be full likelihood, it can be with respect to simplified likelihood, or there's a prescription in Spey to convert Atlas's full likelihoods into simplified likelihood framework. If you want to look into that, it's in the documentation. So basically, we are multiplying these likelihood prescriptions together and doing inference with respect to the full entire likelihood between CMS and Atlas. And as you can see, we can improve the exclusion limits quite largely, assuming, of course, these are not correlated. We are at the moment working on a interface that maybe take care of the correlations between Atlas and CMS at the moment. But since we don't have such information coming from the experiments, this is only an experimental stage right now. But hopefully in the future, if we have more information, we will be able to take care of the nuisance parameters between two different likelihoods as well. So how does this work? In the code, we have something called uncorrelated statistics combiner, and it basically takes the full statistical model as we created above, and effective sigma model, for example, as we again created above, and that's it. Now we have all the functionalities again, same as before, because we have basically constructed the likelihood. So we have all the same functionalities, and I can calculate exclusion confidence level, upper limit on parameter of interest for post-fit, pre-fit, whatever we like. This calculation, by the way, takes around 35 minutes, so I'm not going to press enter. I think I'm running out of time soon, so let me conclude. Hopefully everything is clear. So the main idea is basically, as I told you earlier, creating an interface that can unite different likelihood prescriptions, different likelihood packages, and describe them into same environment. These likelihoods can be smarter, simplified likelihood implementations, or machine learned likelihoods, which cannot be serialized, or dedicated custom likelihoods for individual experiments like Dune. In the paper, I'm showing you a neutrino experiment example, which has really awkward likelihood prescription, which can be implemented in Spey. Or we don't even need to have only likelihood depending on mu or nuisance parameters. We can create a likelihood prescription which calculates the signal yields in a different way. Or, for example, multiple input with the signal structure that takes multiple inputs to calculate different yields, etc. So it's the way you define the likelihood is based on you. I'm just taking Spey basically takes your likelihood prescription and makes it provides you the optimization tools and calculation of the p-values and inference tools and everything. So likelihood is coming from you, and everything else is coming from Spey. So it basically gives you a flexible framework to do all the inference. Hopefully in the future, as I learn more, I will implement more and more statistics playground. Right now we have sampling. If you have the ability to sample from your likelihood, we have the sampling functionality, calculating p-values, calculating gradients, Hessians, everything is differentiable, of course, etc. Hopefully I'm just on time, actually. So I'm going to conclude here. Thank you very much for listening. If you have any questions, if you have time for questions, I'm happy to try to answer them. Thank you.
Thanks very much for a very nice talk, Jack. Yeah, no, you did a great job of sticking to time, so we definitely have time for 1 or 2 questions. So let's see, let's go to Zoom chat. So I don't see any right now, so maybe I can ask one. So can you maybe share a little bit about if people are interested in getting involved with Spey development, where they can go to either contact you or join you?
So in Spey, you can we have all the how to contribute structure. You can basically open a issue if you wanna create, for example, if you wanna create a future request, if you want me to create a future, if you wanna contribute, etc. You can create a bug report, future request if you have questions, anything, and then you can basically fork this and create your own version of Spey and send me a pull request if you want to develop into Spey. But you don't need to do that if you just want to create a likelihood prescription, for example. You can create your own package. For example, I have some examples here. There's a neutrino example. This is basically a custom likelihood structure that designed here. If you import this repository and install it in your computer, Spey will automatically recognize this construction, and you will be able to use this likelihood prescription. Same thing, you can create your own. You don't need to send a pull request to me. You can create your own likelihood prescription, and Spey will automatically recognize it again. I think, yes, so how to build a plugin is defined here. You basically import certain functionality from Spey so that the Spey can recognize your likelihood prescription. It needs certain structures, certain configuration files, how to calculate the likelihood, etc., so that it can basically pull that information from your likelihood prescription and use it for inference for everyone. And as you can see, you can define DOI number, archive number, whatever how you want, so that other people who is using your likelihood prescription can cite your likelihood, hopefully. Yeah, that's it.
Nice. Yeah, I think this plugin system is a really great idea in general, and provides a lot of nice flexibility. So great to see it. Okay, so